Hi, my name is Mara. I'm the president of Sutherland Wells.
I'm Rob Cagnetta. I'm the vice president of Sutherland Wells.
And we're here to talk to you today about our interior or original polymerized tung oil, high luster, and how to apply it. This was the first product in our line of polymerized tung oil finishes. It contains polymerized tung oil that we polymerize here in our shop, and our odorless mineral spirits, which makes our interior product a VOC exempt product. It is also Green Guard certified, and it's made right here in our shop by hand in Rhode Island. It's a great finish for any interior surfaces, any woodwork in your home, like paneling, ceilings. It's great on furniture, countertops. Can you think of any other? Floors, cutting boards. Pretty much.
And it's great for rejuvenating finishes that are old and worn and cracked, and so it's kind of a wood preservative and treatment because it's an oil. It penetrates deep and it saturates and solidifies to become its own finish.
Right. And what's really nice about all of our finishes, because we polymerize the tongue oil will penetrate into the pores of the wood. And as you continue to put layers of finish on, it will eventually form a film finish for extra protection, which makes it different from like a raw tongue oil. So you want to tell the good people what we have here?
Today we've got 4 different types of wood. These are all hardwoods. We have a curly maple, a cherry, a purple heart, and a mahogany. This is a Sippo mahogany, and each of these woods have been sanded with 180 grit, and they're ready for the first coat of polymerized tung oil.
And why don't we go? What's the highest grit you should go on your first sand?
I mean, you could go as high as 220, but I really wouldn't go any higher than that because you really start to close down the pores that prevents the finish from absorbing into the wood.
So the dust from the sanding gets into the pores and
right.
blocks them from the oil getting in there.
And these particular woods, even though they're hardwoods, this one is a little bit oily, more oily than the other ones. So when we apply it, you're going to kind of see some of them sort of go right and sort of almost dry out immediately, and others that are going to be more of a puddle type. So we can kind of show you the difference. Like I said, these are all raw. I dip my brush in. Now these are really small areas, so my dip is going to go real far, but you can really see sort of that changing of the grain, and it's not darkening the wood, it's just saturating the wood, and that saturation is the same as if you put water on it. It's not a yellowing product, so you end up seeing a nice even oil, and even though it looks a little amber in the container, it goes on clear.
And tell us about the brush you're using.
So the brush that we're using are what we sell from Sutherland Wells here. This is a Masters China bristle. It's a blend, so you end up having a lot of bristles per square inch, so you're ending up getting a lot of touch points of your brush to the surface, which prevent it from really looking like you just used your fingers to put it on. You end up having a lot of small bristles that end up flattening it out in successive coats. The sealer coat, it's all we're really trying to do at this point is get the wood so it has oil on it. So this one is less consequential. I am using, this is the PTO high, so it is a little bit thicker, which is fine. To go on as a sealer on these particular boards. There are times that we'll use our sealer because we want to put stain on top of it, but the sealer is essentially the thinned out high is what we're doing. So you can see how the cherry really kind of changed, but honestly this purple heart is going to be the most dramatic, so I'll start in the middle. You can really see how this is changing the color of the wood.
And tung oil also is a grain enhancer, so it makes the grain pop.
So you're really kind of seeing the way that it's penetrating the wood. And as I said, some of these, you can almost see that the maple here has kind of like not dried up, but absorbed more than even the cherry. And now we'll do the mahogany.
And so are you putting on thick coats or thin coats?
I want to make sure everything is well saturated. So I want to make sure that, I have about 20 minutes to kind of keep applying the finish that enable me to make sure that I'm getting enough finish that's going to seal it. And this is a fresh brush, by the way, so I'm losing hairs a little bit. But I don't mind, in that first 20 minutes, I can go back if it's a little dry and add some more, because I'm just trying to get the maximum amount of finish on there that's going to enable it to penetrate nice and deep. And so when successive coats go on, they're not going onto a dry piece of wood.
And so what happens if you are like watching it and you see some areas that are a little that are soaking up the oil more quickly? Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see that on the video.
This is really dry right here. Not really dry, but it's drier than the other spots. This is where I'm going to come back in that first 20 minutes and just kind of reapply it onto that spot, because it looks like that spot was a little thirstier than the others. The mahogany looks like it's actually puddling a little bit here. So here is what we want to be careful of. We don't want to leave this puddling behind, because the thicker the coat is, the longer it takes to cure. And this can be a rubbery mess tomorrow because we left too much finish on there. So that's why we're coming back with a dry brush, where there isn't a ton of finish on it. And if I do have too much on my brush, I just take some off and dry it out a little bit.
And now I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between brushing on your first coat and wiping on your first coat?
With this brush, I'm going to be able to get a lot more finish inside this brush than I am going to get on this rag. So it's going to take a lot more time for me to do it with the rag, but you could do it with the rag, especially when you're doing successive coats, like after you have some absorption, you're having less finish that you're needing to put on there. So dipping this in there and brushing this out, I'm going to have way too much finish on this tiny little piece.
Yep.
So I might be better off just putting a little bit on a rag and just kind of getting the whole surface wet.
And then watching and making sure.
And then watching, making sure I'm not getting any
even
puddles.
Absorption.
And I'm still looking for even absorption at this point. And the cherry's a little blotchy. The maple looks pretty good. But this is just a sealer coat, so I'm not worried about any chunks on it. I'm not worried about any hairs in the finish just yet. But in this first 20 minutes of putting my sealer coat on, I'm just going to maybe brush it a couple times. I can even abandon the brush and sort of start just getting it nice and even.
And when you say sealer coat, we're not actually using the sealer. We're sealing the wood with the high.
We're sealing we're sealing the wood with the high
So
finish.
you don't necessarily need sealer.
Don't need sealer.
But you could use sealer to do this too.
Right, and but like we said, you can take the original high, and we have instructions on our website to turn it into a sealer if you wanted to make it a thinner coat that is leaving less oil behind. But for this, we're not going to be staining this, so we don't mind filling up the grain as much as possible on our first coat. So everything is looking really even right now. Except for a little bit over here. So like I said, I'm just going to kind of watch this for about 20 minutes, make sure it stays nice and even. But when this cures, it's going to be blotchy all over again. And then we're going to start putting on our second, third, and fourth, and fifth coats.
Okay, thank you. Rob, where are we now with this process?
So what we have here are the same woods that we put our sealer just on. But these have 3 coats of the interior polymerized tung oil high. You can see that we're getting to a pretty good sheen on all these guys. We have the cherry, the maple, the purple heart, and the mahogany. And with these, we want to, we've got a pretty good seal on them. We've got a little inconsistency happening here. So we're probably 2 coats away from being done.
Okay.
But we have enough absorption at this point that we can kind of see the finish sitting on the top more than it's absorbing in. First thing we have to do is we have to kill the sheen. We want to kill the sheen with a fine grit. And we can use, this is 400 sandpaper, we can use 600 sandpaper, we can use 4/0 steel wool, and we can use either some synthetic pads as well. I just choose the paper. on flat boards because it's nice and easy and everything's already
And
flat.
so also the scuffing, besides killing the sheen, that does allow for a good bond between layers, right?
Yeah, which you don't want a smooth shiny to a smooth shiny because you don't get a good bond between those two shinies. When you're scuffing it, you're creating irregularities in the finish that's enabling more surface area for that bond to happen.
Take it away, Rob.
So it's just a light. I mean, these guys were done in an area where I don't really need to try to take off any fuzzies or anything like that. All of these are actually in pretty good shape. The grain isn't raised, so I'm not worried about taking off a raised grain.
And just for the white, talk about the little white powder that we're supposed to see.
Yes. So this white powder right here is what we're trying to achieve with a dry finish. When your finish is not turning to this whitish, that means that the finish is still a little gummy. You can even look at the paper. In this case, you can see that the purple is actually coming off a little bit. But when you kind of scuff it and you don't see anything but dust on your paper, that means it's ready to go. But if you started to see it start to collect on here, some finish, that means it's not really ready.
So that's what we call that our cure test.
Yep.
So that's, you want to see that before putting on
the
the next coat.
goes on. Yeah. So
Before proceeding.
so I've done a scuff to it all. Now you can vac it off, but you do want to do a damp cloth. This is just dampened with mineral spirits onto a blue shop towel, and I'm just gonna lightly wipe it. You're going to see a little bit of residue kind of left behind. A little bit of residue is okay to leave behind. You don't want a ton of mineral spirits on there because you don't want to, well, it's, and this is an odorless mineral spirit, so your dry time, your evaporation rate is pretty slow.
Yeah.
Hence, it's a low VOC, so that's kind of why you want to have a low and odorless mineral spirits. But it does take a little bit longer for it to kind of evaporate off the surface. If you felt like you needed to, you can even just go on top of it and just wipe off what's on there. If you feel like that there's a little too much sitting on the surface. But these surfaces now should be smooth, they should be dull, and...
It's smooth.
Sure about that?
Should I do it again?
Yeah, check it.
It's smooth.
So,
But now I left fingerprints. Pass me the shop towel that's going to bug me.
well, that's going to go away once we put our coats on.
I know, but
So when we're putting on the PTO, there's a whole variety of ways you can put a PTO on. People can spray it. You can use a brush. You can use the shop towels. You can use synthetic pads. There's all sorts of ways that you can put it on there. And so the key is just putting it on thin. You don't need a lot of finish at this point because it's already absorbed. And now we're just looking for a layer on the top. So it just needs to be nice and thin. So I could do it with a brush, but this is sort of shooting a mouse with an elephant gun, So this is, you're going to end up with way too much product on top of this. So if I was going to use this brush, I'm just going to dip in slightly and then put it on, but I can see, I've already got a little too much on this piece. But I'll see that I've got so much on here now, I can go onto this piece, and I'm still seeing product left behind when I'm doing this. And at this point, it really doesn't matter if there are puddles or anything. I'm just going to let it sit, right?
And are you going to show us applying with a blue cloth?
So if we're going to do it with a blue cloth, let me take a fresh one. We like the blue cloths because these are dust-free, and you can use a rag as long as it's actually dust-free. So I like to fold it up into squares, and then you can dip it in there. You're getting a good amount of finish on there, and then you can sort of just wipe it on. And again, you're just making sure that everything is wet. You're not worried about leaving brush mark. I'm not worried about if I go cross grain, and or there's some dead spots. I'm not even worried about that yet.
You missed a little spot in the corner.
See, I'm not even worried about that yet. But
I'm worried about it.
so, because I'm going to come back after 20 minutes because I want to allow the solvent to flash, and I want the tung oil to kind of start to solidify a little bit after my 20 minutes, because that's what's going to do our buff if you wanted to buff it out. I'll do this last one right here. It's my dip, and then apply. There are some that will use this as their finish coat and don't want to wipe it off.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
It's all okay.
So if I were going to do that, let's say I'm doing that to this piece of mahogany, that's where leaving bare spots is going to matter on the first shot, right? So this is not very wet. I'm not squeezing anything out of this. So now I can just come in and I can use this as my final brush stroke to make sure I've got nice and consistent finish.
Yep.
And then I'm going away from towards my edges, not away from, because if I do this, I'm sort of scraping it and I could be dripping on the edge right here. So I don't want to do that. So now if I wanted to, I don't have to go back and wipe this one. This could be done.
Done. Okay.
This could be done if I wanted it to be. But if it's not, if we want to have that hand rubbed finish, then we're going to wait 20 minutes.
Okay. So we wait 20 minutes now?
So we got to wait 20 minutes.
Okay. See you in 20
figure
minutes.
out something to do.
So we're back. It's been about 20 minutes with our, what is this, fourth coat?
Yep.
Fourth coat of PTO on these boards. And Rob, what are you going to do now?
So this is the wiping method where we're going to, where we applied the finish 20 minutes ago. We didn't let it puddle necessarily, but we just covered the whole surface so everything is wet. So that now what we're going to do is use a blue shop towel or a lint-free rag is best. I did read an article that Frank said.
Frank, the founder
ago.
of Sutherland Wells, he used to do it with his hands.
Yeah, he used to basically do this and get his palm hot. And right
now, Rob is rubbing his hand on his pants. If you can't see that,
doing that. So, and then he would rub the surface. I haven't tried that, but really, what he's trying to do is to create a little bit of heat. So when he's buffing it, he's actually helping cure it a little bit. So not that you need to generate as much friction to create heat. But we are sort of taking off the finish that's sitting at the top. So, I don't necessarily need to wipe it dry. I'm just sort of wiping it. So I took off anything that was, you could see that it's moist sort of on the rag.
Anything that's not absorbed?
Anything that's not absorbed. I mean, I think, if we were to go where you're really kind of doing this, then you are taking off a lot of the finish. So what I usually do is just kind of give it a very nice light wipe.
And you make sure it's even, right?
And you make sure it's even,
okay.
Right. And so, you sure it's even? You're right with that?
Yeah, I mean, you want me to check because I am clearly...
Well, apparently you're going to say it without...
I absolutely am.
So
you can count on me for that.
So what we're trying to do is just kind of give that buffed look to it, where we're just sort of wiping off whatever it didn't absorb. But it's not as if...
and can you go circular or straight, or it doesn't really matter?
It almost doesn't matter because, as you're buffing it, it doesn't matter. But I would go with the grain. It just does create... Staying ahead of you. It's fine. So, but you're just trying to take off whatever didn't absorb. This is the Purple Heart. And we can see the Purple Heart is actually, it almost seems like it's leaving a little more gloss behind.
And, how do we, so with this line, with the PTO line, with the original polymerized tung oil, the interior line, how do we control the sheen in this line?
We control the sheen by our tung oil, polymerized tung oil is a really high gloss, right? So as we kill it with mineral spirits or the dicitrosol, it's lessening sort of the sheen each time we add a little bit more to it. So our high luster has the greatest percentage of tung oil in it, and our sealer has the most amount of
solvent
in it.
So
You can also control the sheen by wiping it, right? So I can leave this one just like this, and I just brushed it, and I put it on nice and thin, and it's done.
if you want more sheen than the rubbed look.
If you want a little more sheen, right? And these guys, I almost feel like that I can wipe it a little more even. I could just leave this one like this.
And that would give you more sheen.
And that would give you a little bit more sheen. I can also just go on it nice and light, right? That I'm not trying to take it all off, but I'm just trying to take it so it's even.
Yeah, so the cool thing about a PTO, what I think is cool, is that you could buy the high and you can add mineral spirits to make whichever sheen you would like. So if if the PTO high, the hand rub look that we've just done, it feels a little too shiny, you can take the high and add some mineral spirits and go to medium or low, which is a really nice, especially if you're someone who likes to mix things. We do sell low and medium versions of the original, as well as a sealer.
And it's really key to make sure you're waiting between application and wiping this. You have to wait 20 minutes or more, depending on, it's a little chilly in here right now. It's cold outside, so we waited a little bit longer, but I can kind of feel it. And if I should have gloves on, but you can kind of feel that it's getting a little tacky.
And so how do you know if you need another coat after this fourth coat?
I think you start to look at the consistency of the sheen.
Okay.
Right? And if you see that there are some spots that are still quote unquote dead, where the finish is absorbed in but not left anything behind, then you're going to have to catch up that spot so it's just leaving the film behind. There are times on projects where spots are stubborn, and we literally just concentrate on that one little spot for 3 coats. And we don't coat anything else, we just coat that one spot. To just kind of catch that one up. There are certain woods like walnuts and things where the grain sort of comes up that it just seems like it's a sponge and it just won't stop.
And it's good to get that on the. It's good to try to handle that on the first coat.
Well,
right?
yeah, as much as it can handle on as you're applying your sealer coats is what you put on. So I'll put it on my sealer coats and let it sit for 10 minutes. And if it's dry, I'm going to put more sealer on.
And by sealer coats, you're not necessarily saying you need to buy the sealer. Sealer coats are the first coats that you're putting on before the finished coats.
For the polymerized tung oil, yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So
that is correct.
And
for
then this,
for this line.
Yeah, and these are all looking really, really nice. I almost think, the mahogany looks like it's about done. I would say the Purple Heart can use another one because I see a little bit of blotchy in here. The maple, maple's gorgeous, and I just feel like the more build on maple just looks better. And the cherry's not bad. So, but I think out of all these guys, the mahogany is sort of looking the best.
So maybe another coat.
Maybe
we
another
always
coat.
recommend at least 4 coats.
Yep, and this is the 4th one right here.
Yeah, so we may do another one.
Could be done, or you can just put another one on. Honestly, you can put on 10 coats. It's not going to harm the wood. You're not going to be creating so much build that you're going to get a failure. So there are times that you're just going to need to put on more because the wood wants it. So.
And if you spend a lot of time on your work, deserves a great finish. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.